This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good morning. So let's look at the Parshiot that we've had, Tazria, Metzora, and next week's Parsha, which will be delayed for a few weeks, but that's Acharei Mot. And that, well, we'll see if we even get to there. That we could actually leave for after Pesach, because, of course, this Shabbos is Pesach, so we don't do our regular Torah reading. And next Shabbos, actually, it's interesting. Next Shabbos for us is the 8th day of Pesach. So we also won't do the regular Shabbos Torah reading. But in Israel, there's only 7 days of Pesach, as the Torah dictates, not the added 8th day that we have outside of Israel. So in Israel, the Shabbos after this one will not be Pesach. It'll be a regular Shabbos. They still won't be able to eat their chametz because um, they had no time to do it going into Shabbos. But so they're going to do the regular Torah reading. We're still going to do our Pesach Torah reading. And for a number of months, we'll see exactly how long, we're going to be off kill with Israel. So we're going to have they're going to be one Parsha ahead of us until at some point they're going to do a single Parsha. We're going to do a double Parsha, and then we will once again be in sync. But right now, so when people travel to Israel after Pesach, it gets to be a little bit confusing in terms of the Parsha. So we will leave actually Acharei Mot. We'll leave that for after Pesach when we resume. And let's take a look a little bit at Tazria and Metzora. And we'll see some interesting, I think, connections between these Parshiot and Pesach. First of all, on page 608, 608, Parsha Tazria, Perek Yud Bet, Pasuk Aleph. So it actually starts before we get to the real topic of these two parshiot, which is Tzara'at. Tzara'at is misdefined as leprosy, right? Probably because the Torah talks about this Tzara'at and the person must be sent outside the camp. And later on, when there was this skin disease known as leprosy, which I think is very contagious, so the person needed to be sent outside. So that's probably why they translated Sarat as leprosy, but it's not leprosy as we know it. We'll come to that soon. But the Parsha begins first with Tazria, with a woman when she gives birth. When she gives birth to a male, to a boy, the pasuk says she will be tme'ah. I don't like the English translation contaminated. I prefer the ritually impure for a 7-day period. Pasuk Gimel, verse 3 says, Uviyom Hashmini, on the 8th day, of course, they will do the circumcision. And then for another 33 days after the initial 7, so a total of 40. Then any bleeding that she has is considered demei tahara. It's considered a pure bleeding. Nevertheless, for those 40 days, she cannot come in contact with Kodesh, and she cannot enter the Beit HaMikdash. So after giving birth, she is Tme'ah for a period of 40 days, 7 plus 33. And often this strikes us as strange, and we're actually even a little bit uncomfortable with this. Because what is impure about giving birth? That is the most beautiful, holy, lofty, incredible experience that parents ever experience. It is truly otherworldly. I remember when my first son was born, I was living in Israel. I didn't have relatives nearby. I had close friends. And I was like a drunk person. I was going door to door to my neighbors and friends. Natalie had a baby, giving them a hug, and then going, Natalie had a baby. I was literally, not literally, but I was like drunk. I wasn't literally drunk, but I was like I was drunk with happiness. So why does this result in this tuma, in this ritual impurity? And then it gets worse before it gets better, because Pasuk Hey, verse 5 tells us that if it is a nekeva, if it's a girl, then it's not 7 days of impurity. It's going to be 14 days of impurity. And then it's not another 33 days, it's another 66 days. Altogether, 80 days. And only then at the end of the 40 for a son, or the end of the 80 for a daughter, then the sacrifices are brought, and then this whole period of impurity comes to an end. So how do we wrap our heads around this impurity of childbirth? So that's why I don't like to use the term contamination, right? This spiritual impurity is not what we would think it is. And let me give you some examples. A person was died, so the corpse, the body, causes tuma, causes impurity. That is why when we visit Israel and we go to the Kotel, and there's the ramp that takes you up to the Temple Mount, there's a sign there that says the rabbinate forbids or discourages, I don't know the exact term, Jews to go up to the Temple Mount. Why is that? The Temple Mount is the holiest place. That's the place of the Beit HaMikdash. That's exactly why. Being that it's the place of the Beit HaMikdash, anyone who's ritually impure is not allowed to go there. Now, we have all been to funerals. We've all been involved with burials. We've been to hospitals and people have died in the hospitals. So we are all tamei mate. We are all ritually impure because of our contact with a mate. And therefore, and we don't have the red heifer in order to purify ourselves through that whole process. Therefore, a person who's tamei cannot enter onto the Temple Mount. It's the place of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. Now, there are very religious people who do go up there because they claim or they know or they feel confident that they know which area of the Temple Mount was actually the place where the Beit HaMikdash was and which areas of up there are not part of the Azara of the courtyard, and therefore they feel confident going up there. But we're all tamei mate. Now, if a person comes in contact, if it is a non-Jew who has died, so either by actual contact or carrying the weight of that body, one becomes impure. But by being under the same roof, the same ceiling, one does not. Whereas by a Jew who died, there the tum'ah is even greater. And if a person, even without coming in contact or carrying the weight of it, but if a person is under the same roof as the mate, as the deceased, then a person becomes tamei. So it comes out that a Jew, upon his death, is tamei, more impure, or exudes a greater degree of tumah than a non-Jew. So clearly we need to understand what is this whole concept of tum'ah, of impurity. And we human beings, we Jews, but human beings, we have a mission, a purpose in life. We were born for a reason. We were sent to this world for a reason. And that is to increase the Kedusha, increase the holiness, increase the godliness that is here in the world. Tum'ah comes about and fills a vacuum that is created when the Kedusha that was there, the holiness that was there, the potential holiness that was there, is no longer there. A Jew, every human being, has the ability to bring godliness into the world. Non-Jews have the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide mitzvot. That's their 7 pathways of godliness, of holiness, of bringing God into the world. That's when a person is alive. They have that capacity, they have that ability. When that person dies, then the soul that was breathed into them lifts off the body. And now we're left with the container, with the garment. The body is a garment to the soul. That's what we're left with. And it is devoid of this holiness, of this potential that it had before. The void created by this holiness potential leaving is now filled with what we call tum'ah. There is impurity. That's why even when a person sleeps at night, when we wake up in the morning, the sages tell us there's a certain degree of impurity on us, and we wash our hands in a certain manner to remove this impurity. What is this impurity? Well, the sages say that sleep is 1/60th of death, meaning just like when a person dies, the neshama leaves, the soul leaves, and one has an inability to be actively engaged in positivity, in holiness, in godliness. So too, when we're asleep, part of our neshama leaves. That's the moda ani that we say, Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, you've returned the soul to me. And now we have this regained ability to act. And therefore we wash our hands in the morning, on one hand, to remove any residue of this impurity of the night, of the sleep. And also because like a Kohen, the Kohen, he would enter the temple, he would wash his hands and feet actually, in order to get ready to do the service. So too, our world, our family, our job, our home, our relationships, that is our temple. That is our Beit HaMikdash. And therefore we wash our hands as we ready ourselves for that. A Jew who dies, a Jew who has Taryag mitzvot, who has 613 of these pathways, of these potential connections, has the ability of 613 paths of bring holiness to the world. So when a Jew dies, there is a greater vacuum, void that is created, and there is a greater degree of tum'ah, of impurity. And that is why the Jewish body of the deceased exudes a greater degree of tum'ah, and even under the same roof will be an issue. That is why many Kohanim, priests, Kohanim, are commanded not to come in contact with a mate. So many of them don't fly El Al. They rather fly United or other airlines to Israel. Why is that? Because El Al often transports bodies. And even though the compartment is set up that it's a separate compartment under the plane, and therefore that compartment ceiling is considered to be the ceiling, but there's a concern there might not be enough space, in which case it's not considered a ceiling, and therefore it is the ceiling of the passengers that would be considered the same roof for all. Okay. When a woman has her period, also after that, there is a period, a time period of tumah, of impurity. And on that is based the family purity laws, that a husband and wife, after the wife has her period, they separate and don't engage in marital intimacy until the woman goes at the proper time, goes to the mikveh, and then they can once again re-engage in marital intimacy. So why is there tumah over there by a woman having her period? So along the same idea that the period is the end of there being potential life, right? The uterus, the blood flow and the blood flow to the uterus had increased, getting ready for conception and sustaining this new life that could have been born, and the period is the sign of that unrealized potential. So the period is a death of sorts. There was potential for life, and that potential for life has come to an end. When there's potential for life and that comes to an end, that's potential for holiness and kedusha that is now no longer available. So the result is a void. And as always, a void of kedusha is filled by the opposite, is filled by that tumah, that ritual impurity. Let's come now to childbirth. So childbirth is beautiful, it's holy. Actually, it's incredibly beautiful, incredibly holy. If we are meant to emulate God, and certainly one of the aspects of God, qualities of God, is that God is a creator. So the point of time that a human being can become as much creator-like as a human being ever can become is a woman at childbirth. A woman at childbirth is the closest that a human being ever comes to being a creator. A woman is as godlike as a human being can ever be at the time of childbirth. She is creating then. And at that point, she is at an incredibly high level of godlikeness. Once the child is born, now she is no longer superwoman. She is no longer super godlike human being. Now she becomes a mere mortal like the rest of us. This precipitous drop in this holiness that she had achieved at childbirth and is no longer there, that creates the void that we've been discussing. And the void is filled with tum'ah. And that is why there is this ritual impurity after childbirth, because after having been up in the stratosphere, at the highest heights of spirituality, she now has landed and come back. She's come back down to earth. And therefore, that drop in spirituality results in this tum'ah. Why is there a double period after giving birth to a girl? So the Chidushei Harim explains very beautifully, because she has created a creator. When she has a boy, the boy does not have the potential to become a creator like the mother. But when she gives birth to a girl, she has created a creator. So that is the understanding, and that is why I don't like, I shouldn't say the understanding. that is an understanding in this idea of tumah, and that is why I don't like to use the term of contamination. It is not contamination. A vacuum caused by intense kedusha that was there, that is no longer there now. So the greater the tumah, the greater the kedusha that was there, that is no longer there at this later point. Okay, our parsha then goes into the idea, Tazria then goes into the idea of tzara'at. And like I said before, tzara'at is mistakenly translated as leprosy, but it is not leprosy. It is a physical manifestation of a spiritual lacking in the person, and this comes out in the body. And our sages teach us Metzora actually comes from the word motzi ra. So a person, our sages teach us there are many causes of this, whether it is arrogance or stinginess, but it all comes back to this basis of what we call lashon hara. Lashon hara is when one speaks badly about others. And there are two categories. There's lashon hara, which is actually defined as true derogatory statements. And there is motzi shem ra, which is false. Motzi, you are creating, you're being mamtzi, you are creating a bad name. That is when it is false derogatory information that is being said about others. And both of them are prohibited. And very often you'll hear someone say, it's not lashon hara because it's true. So that makes no sense. The fact that it's true makes it the very definition of lashon hara. The very fact that it's true is what categorizes it as lashon hara. But it's very, very interesting when we look at this, when we analyze this. There's an expression, God's not going to send a lightning bolt. There are no lightning bolts, right? And we live in a world where terrible things go on and the heavens stay silent. And even in the time of the Torah, where it could be idolatry, the heavens stayed silent. It could be Shabbat, all these terrible things. It could be murder, all these things that go on, and the heavens stay silent. Yet when it comes to Lashon Hara, all of a sudden there is this lightning bolt. Not in the form of a lightning bolt, but in the form of this skin issue that lets the person realize, wow, something here is really, really off. And not only that, but it would come in stages. There was tzara'at that would afflict a person's house, and the walls would turn either red or green, and it would be removed and replaced, and it would come back. And this is not just mold. This is something beyond that which we are accustomed to. And if a person would not take the lessons needed to be learned, it would affect the person's garments. Now, this is not that, it's like me trying to do the laundry and the colors running all over the place onto things that shouldn't have been washed together with whatever I washed it. We're talking about white garments, not washed, which all of a sudden have this affliction on it, this discoloration on it. And then the third stage is it hits the body of the person. And all of a sudden, when it comes to Lashon Hara, we have these lightning bolts, these heavenly slaps that lets a person know this can't continue. You can't do this. And we mentioned before that when I was discussing the tzarat and the tumah of a person who has died, right? How the soul has left the body. These are all garments. These are all garments. Our house is one form of a garment. A closer garment are the clothes that we wear. But our body is also a garment. It's a garment of our essence, of our soul, of who we really are. These are all different garments. And perhaps the lesson that is teaching us is, and what often spurs us to speak Lashon Hara, is that we have an unbalance of what's really important. And this person did this, and this person has that, and I'm jealous, and I'm speaking about it. Or this person did this to me. It is a misplacement of priorities, of a non-recognition of what's truly important and what are these different garments. But it's fascinating that this is the one area where God sends us lightning bolts. When it comes to speech, that is the area where God literally sends these lightning bolts. The clothing only happened in Israel. The houses only happened in Israel. This was a very, very unique, intimate connection with God, that he would literally speak to us through this. And he would send lightning bolts. So my question to you is, why? Why is it that out of all the sins and all the mitzvot, the positive and negative mitzvot that we have, is it? And we always say, well, what is God going to strike me with a lightning bolt? Why is it that when it comes to this, yes, God does strike with a lightning bolt? What would you say, my friends? What is unique about this that we have a lightning bolt? Please.
Kathy.
Oh. Well, Hashem spoke all of creation into being. So words are very powerful. Death and life are in the hand of the tongue. And we either build up or we destroy. We bring life or we bring death.
Okay.
Words are important.
Okay. Nice. So Kathy is referencing that back in Bereshit, it says, and God said, let there be light. And God said, who is God speaking to? Well, it means God willed that there should be light, and there was light. So why does the Torah present it as God spoke? To let us know the power of words, that words have this ability, right? And there's a pasuk in Mishlei, Hachayim v'hamavet, life and death are biyad lashon, in the hands of the tongue. So it is the power of speech. Okay, Ora?
I may be wrong, but isn't Eshet Lot was happening because of some things that has to do with speaking? I'm not sure I'm right here, but that's where I'm going with my
So by the wife of Lot, she was turned to a pillar of salt.
Right.
So according to the Torah, what the verses, the psukim say, is they were told not to look back. She looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. Why specifically a pillar of salt? So there Rashi brings the medrash that when Lot would bring in guests and offer, right, and offer some bread with salt, she would say, even that terrible custom from the house of Abraham, are you trying to bring into our house? right? So she didn't even want to give the salt. So perhaps that's what you're thinking of the things that she said, why she turned into that.
I guess I was wrong in the association, but it's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But even with what you both are saying, why is speech, right? Else you look at what's happening with Russia and Ukraine today, right? That is a lot more egregious than me speaking badly about my neighbor. Yet God is not striking Putin with leprosy. Hitler wasn't struck with leprosy. Stalin wasn't struck with leprosy. But someone who's speaking about others is struck with tsaras. I shouldn't say leprosy. Is struck with this. Yes, Cheryl.
I think that, whoops.
We have you in stereo.
Oh, geez. Let me close this. Sorry. Sitting on my phone now.
Okay.
Once you say something, that's it. It's out. And you cannot ever take it back.
Okay. That is a very valid point. The way that I like to put it is before you say it, you own it. After you say it, it owns you. Right? Yeah. Yeah, but once I kill someone, I can't take it back either. Right? Once I shoot the bullet, I can't take it back either. Right? But right, yeah. If I could just add a thought, what makes us uniquely human is our ability to speak. Right? Animals also communicate. Whales have their whale song that spreads in the water. I think they could hear another one 30, 40 miles away. Right? Incredible. Animals all communicate with one another. But it's human beings who have this ability of speech to communicate ideas, feelings, sentiments, philosophies, religions, right? What we can convey with our speech goes far beyond mating calls or danger warning calls. That is what makes us uniquely human. And actually, when it says back in Bereshit, by the creation of man, when it says he became a nefesh chaya, the Targum, the Aramaic translation says lenefesh mimalala, which means one with the ability to speak. And speech is an incredible gift. The Chavetz Chaim says very, very powerfully. He quotes a pasuk which I don't know offhand, but the pasuk says, the verse says that God said, "I became weary from your words," and God becoming weary is a very, very interesting concept, right? We don't normally associate God with becoming weary, but the commentator explains that weariness comes about a sense of, really, are you kidding? Meaning the sense we have when I've done something to help you, and that which I did to help you ends up being used to your detriment. And had I not done this to help you, you would not have been harmed nearly as much as happened as a result of my giving you this gift. That's when I have a sense of weariness, of this sense of, I was trying so hard to help, and look what happened. And the Chavetz Chaim explains that Hashem, God, gave humankind this ability to speak in order to accelerate our ability to amass mitzvot, godliness, spirituality, goodness in the world. The way that our mouth, lips, tongue, throat comes together as we are speaking at a quick pace is actually incredible gymnastics, what is going on. All the movements that are going on so smoothly, so effortlessly as we are speaking is incredible gymnastics. And if we pause for a moment, it says, and to think what goes into every word that it's not it's not the audio, it's me, don't worry, right? That we say, right? If we had to do that with every word that we would say, then this class we would cover 2 psukim in an hour, as opposed to we speak. The Chavetz Chaim says, I think we speak about 200 words a minute. 200 words a minute. 200 times 60 comes out to 12,000. So every single word of Torah is a mitzvah, right? So we have 12,000 mitzvot in an hour. How many acts can a person do in an hour? Nowhere near the 12,000. So this acceleration is a gift that's given to mankind. But it's a very, very powerful gift. And in the same way, when it comes to Lashon Hara, so if it would take me 5 minutes to say something about someone else, I would very quickly decide it's not worth the effort. But because it is, in fact, effortless, hey, did you hear what so-and-so did? Did you hear what she said? Did you hear what he did? All right. In a second, because it's effortless, so therefore a person can cause tremendous harm to themselves, to the person they're speaking about, to the listeners, in such an effortless, free-flowing manner. And that is this sense of futility that Hashem becomes yaga, wearied by it. So perhaps the reason that we have this lightning bolt is because of this is what defines us as human beings. This was a gift that God gave us as human beings as a means of accruing a tremendous amount of growth during the limited time that we're granted in this world. And if we're using this locomotive to go in the wrong direction, then the plug needs to be pulled. And the person, in fact, is sent out of the machaneh, right? It's like it's a godly timeout. If you don't know how to play nicely, then you can't play. Timeout. If you don't know how to communicate nicely, how to deal with others properly, then you can't communicate with others. But it's very, very important to realize that it's not that therefore we should become a recluse and not talk at all. The Chavetz Chaim himself, known as the Chavetz Chaim because of the halachic compendium that he wrote, or Yisroel Meir Kagan HaKohen, he wrote this whole halachic compendium on the laws of speech, based on the pasuk, Mi ha'ish ha'chavetz chaim, who's the person who loves life? Oiv yamim lirotov, nitzor l'shon chameira, guard your mouth from speaking evil. But he was very talkative, and he would teach and he would talk, but he was just incredibly judicious in terms of what he would say. And we're not supposed to be quiet. We're supposed to be engaging, but in a proper manner. And that actually We find that in Metzora, in the next Parsha, page 620, that Perek Yudalid, where we deal with the purification process. The purification process that a person goes through at the end. So there are shtei tzipurim. He takes, verse 5, the tziva Kohen, and the Kohen shall command. He's going to take these two birds. One bird shall be slaughtered into an earthenware vessel over spring water, and the live bird, right, it is dipped into this, and then it is sent out over, right, sent out to go fly free. And the Zohar says these two birds represent Lashon Hara and Lashon Tov. Lashon Hara, the birds, they chirp away, they chirp away, they chirp away. One bird is slaughtered. That is the Lashon Hara, the chirping that was speaking in a derogatory manner or a jealous manner about others. That is what needs to be cut off. That needs to be slaughtered. But the other bird gets sent out. He says is Lashon Tov. We should and we must speak, and speak positively, and speak encouragingly, and see the good in others and share that with others. Now, granted, there is a halacha that one should not overdo, be overly effusive in one's praise of others, because that will often lead the listeners to balance it and say, I think you're going a little over the top, because this person also does A, B, C, D. So that could lead to Lashon Hara. But to speak in a normal fashion, positively about others, that is what we are in fact supposed to do. And that also doubles back to that pasuk. The pasuk about from which the Chavetz Chaim got his name, and he based his sefer on. So the whole pasuk reads, or the psukim read, who is the person HaChavetz Chaim who wants life? Ohev Yamim, loves days, Lirot Tov, to see good. And the answer to that question is Nitzor Lishon Chamera, guard your tongue from evil. Usvatecha, and your lips midaber mirma, from speaking with guile. So normally it's broken up the way I broke it up. It's a question and an answer. Who is the person who wants life, to see good and to have good? Guard your tongue. Question, answer. But there are those that explain that no, it's actually, there are three parts to it. It's not just telling you what to do, but it's giving you the roadmap. It's a path. It's giving you advice as to how you can avoid Lashon Hara. So let's hear it again. Mi ha'ish hechafetz chaim? Who's the person who wants life? Question mark. Oh, here's what you should do. Ohev yamim lirot tov. Love days. See the good. Wake up in the morning and say, wow, what a beautiful day. I'm healthy. The people that I love are doing well. Life is great. I have a roof over my head. I have food in the refrigerator. I have meaningful relationships with people. I'm involved in meaningful things. Life is great. The cup's not half full. The cup is overflowing. Ohev yamim, love days, lirot tov, see all the good that's around. And then look at others and see all the good that's in others. Once that is my view, that's what I see. It's very simple. Why should I speak badly? This person's amazing, and that person's amazing, and God is great, and life is great. And even when I have some challenges, life is great. The world is great. I'm alive. That is a gift. Every day is a gift. So Ohev Yamim Liro Tov is the answer. That's the attitude a person needs to try to have. And then as a result, it's very easy to hold back your tongue from speaking badly. Right? Why should I speak badly? There's so good out there. Granted, the person might have messed up over here, but such a good person. So they messed up. I'm going to speak about the one fault, the broken tile idea. You have a wall with 1,000 tiles. If there's one that's broken, our eyes are drawn to that one broken tile. We have to be careful when we look at people that we don't allow our eyes to be drawn to the broken tile. But everyone has some broken tiles. But to see all the fixed, all the beautiful, shiny, excellent tiles that comprise every person, right? That's what we need to do. That's where our focus needs to be. And that is the eights. And that's what the Zohar says. We have the Lashon Tov that needs to be sent out. That needs to be sent. Now, Pesach means skipping over. Also, it means to have compassion. But there is another breakdown that we see in the word Pesach, and that is Pesach. Pe is a mouth. Sach means to speak. And when we were enslaved, when we were avadim leparo b'Mitzrayim, enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt, we didn't have the ability to speak. Right? A slave has no voice. What he has to say doesn't matter. He is commanded to do, and he must do. Pesach is when mouths started to speak, when we had the ability to be in control of ourselves and others around us, to not be in control of others, but to help control what's going on around us and not be at the whim and the mercy of a tyrannic ruler like a Paro. So Pesach also makes us realize, and that is why the mitzvah of the Seder is Haggadah, is the telling of the story. When our mouths, so to speak, became liberated, we must use those mouths to do mitzvot, to tell the story of the great deliverance, the great exodus, and to train ourselves to make sure that we're using our peh, our mouth, for the proper things. It's interesting that it's called nega tsara'at. Nega means in affliction, but nega comes from the Hebrew root naga. Naga means to touch. And therefore it is, right, God's touch. Tap on the shoulder, letting us, redirecting us, saying, guys, things are kind of rotten over here, right? You can't just continue on, right? Nega is also the term that we had by the plagues. Od nega echad avi al paro. The pasuk says, one more nega I will bring upon Paro. Whenever it is God actively engaging in what is going on in this world, it is a nega, it is a touch. Those plagues were meant to be a touch that was supposed to move Paro. Plan A, as is often described, was that, as it says throughout, in order that Paro will know, in order that Mitzrayim will know, Paro, Mitzrayim, that was the power of the world. If they had gotten on board, then it would have been a very, very different world. That was the Negaim that were coming, the Nega that was coming there. They refused to come on board, so therefore plan B was they were destroyed. And Am Yisroel was taken out. And we learned those lessons, and we are the ones who are tasked with spreading that. But it's interesting how the Lashon Hara goes all the way back to the very beginning of the enslavement. If you look on page 298 in our Stone Chumashim, and that is in Shemot. I'll tell you in 1 minute. Ora on Shemot, Perek Bet, chapter 2, Pasuk Yud Aleph. Let's take a look at the very top of 298. It was in those days, Moshe grew older. He was living in the house of Paro, being brought up by the daughter of Paro Batya, and he went out to his brothers to see their burdens. And he saw an Ish Mitzri, he saw an Egyptian man, Makkah, beating an Ish Ivri, a Hebrew man, Me'echav, again, from his brothers. He felt that kinship, he felt that brotherhood. Vayifen ko v'cho, he turned this way and that. Vayar, and he saw ki ein ish, that there was no man. Vayachet ha-Mitzri, and he killed that Mitzri who was mercilessly beating this Hebrew. Vayitmeneu b'chol, and he hid him in the sand. Vayetze v'yom hasheni, Moshe went out again on the second day. V'hinei, and behold, shnei anashim ivrim nitzim, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. Vayomer l'rasha, and he said to the one of them, Lama takeh re'echa, why are you going to hit your fellow? Vayomer, he responded, Mi samcha le'ish, who appointed you as a sar v'shofet, as an officer, as a judge over us? Lahargeni ata omer, are you going to say to murder me? Kasher haragta et ha-Mitzri, the same way you killed the Egyptian, are you going to kill me too? Vayira Moshe, and Moshe became afraid. Vayomar, and he said, Achein, nodah hadavar, the matter is known. So the simple meaning, of course, is, which matter is known? I killed the Mitzri. I looked this way and that. I didn't see anyone. I thought it went unnoticed. And then I buried him in the sand. I thought it went unnoticed. But nodah davar, the matter is known. Word is out. I better be careful. That is the simple meaning. The deeper meaning, the Medrash says as follows. Rashi quotes it, and also the English also brings it. The English, not above on 299, but under the line on 299, the first column by 14. No doubt, if I'll read the Rashi in Hebrew. Rashi first says, Kamash ma'o, the matter is known, as it seems to be saying, meaning very simply, the matter that I killed the Egyptian is known. Umedrasho, but the Medrash says, No dalia davar shita tamalav. Now I understand something that I was really wondering about. Ma chatu Yisroel. What was the sin of Israel? Mikol ayin umot. There are these 70 nations. What was the sin of this nation? Liot niradim. That they should be so oppressed. Ba'avodat parech. From this harsh labor imposed upon them. Aval roa ani shem ru'uyin lakach. But I now see why this has come to them. And they quarrel, as the English says, and they'll tell on one another. In other words, it was, according to this Medrash, it was the sin of speech that had brought us into this state that we were in. That is what brought us down, right? And as relates to Tazria and Metzora. And therefore Pesach needs to be the mouth speaking, the proper speech, and it needs to be used taking this very, very powerful weapon and using it properly. And when I was a teenager, so it would say, oh, you have to be careful on the telephone, right? How speech can travel. And in our world, in our social media world, computerized world, incredible. People say something, and then it's forever there. It's forever there, and you can delete the screenshot. Doesn't make a difference. It's always there. It's bouncing, bouncing, bouncing around, and that is the incredible gift that Hashem gave us, and that was fully realized with Pesach, the Pesach, when we left Egypt and became this nation. And it is this super dangerous weapon that we have that can be used for so much good and must be used for so much good. And we can't become traumatized and not use it at all. But at the same time, we need to be careful to make sure that that which makes us uniquely human will not drag us down and drag others down, but it'll be used as a tool, like Kathy said initially, as a tool for creation. As Hashem used it as a tool for creation, we too must be sure to use it as such a tool. So let me wish everybody a Shavua Tov and a Chag Kosher V'Sameach. And the lunch and learn on Thursday is going to be sort of going through the Seder a bit. So those who like to join, that'll be 12:30 on Thursday. And next week again, Tuesday morning, we will not be having our class on Chol HaMoed. Yes, Cheryl.
So when Moshe noticed about the speech, was Rashi referring to just that particular incident that he realized?
Oh, that's interesting. So right, so if it's just two people, that wouldn't affect the whole nation. It seems that this was somewhat prevalent. That's what we'd have to say.
Well, the other
Right.
thing I'm wondering is, how did they get there in the first place? I mean, so during the days of Yaakov and all of that, does it relate to that also?
Yeah, well, it certainly does relate to speech over there, right? It was Yosef relaying bad things to the father about the brothers,
Yeah.
right? And then it was the jealousy of the brothers. Yeah. Invariably, it goes back to speech. Yeah.
It's
It
kind
all
of like a
began.
human condition.
I'm sorry?
It's like a human condition. It's like a bad character trait or something.
It's a uniquely human challenge. Really, that's what we were saying, right? It's a unique human ability with incredible positive aspects to it, but there's always the balance. If there's that much positive, then there's that much negative also. And it's a human quality that needs to be correctly directed and channeled. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, my friends. Shavua Tov, everybody. And I'll hopefully see you soon, Thursday. And then again, after Pesach, we will resume again.
Aksamea.
But we'll see you Thursday, right?
Sameach.
Thank you.